In this video, we are going to uncover 4 really effective strategies that you can utilize when you have a difficult conversation, an argument, or perhaps a likelihood of having an argument. These are 4 really effective strategies that are underutilized. And because they are utilized, situations blow up out of proportion. So we're going to look at 4 effective strategies to have difficult conversations. My hope for you today is that you will take what serves you and chuck out the rest that doesn't. So the first strategy is to stick to the situation, stick to the behavior, stick to the decision, the actions, or the behaviors that happened in that moment, as opposed to the individual. So often it is we see in arguments and disagreements and difficult conversations, whether they're in work or in a business or in your personal life, regardless of the type of relationship that you have with that person that you're having that conversation, what tends to happen is that we start to talk about the other person, or the other person receives that information as, I'm a bad person, woe is me. And there might be a bad person. There might be a really shitty person. And there is a boundary line and a limit between how effective we are employing strategies and in a conversation, and obviously what is someone else's shit and them taking responsibility for that shit, and putting that boundary line to say, don't dump that shit on me, you better scoop that up and put it on your side of the fence, and if you don't, I'm going to do that for you. And what we do know is that, I know even for myself, it's so easy to talk about the other person rather than the behaviors or the actions or decisions that that person made that is a source of that conflict, or even for my own, that is a source of that conflict. Often when I'm the person that has offended, that has caused hurt or harm, I can very much go into this dialogue of like, I'm a really shitty person. This great thing about me is that I will own my strengths. Own my strengths. Yes, I will own my strengths. I will own my weaknesses. I will own my flaws. I will apologize almost immediately. And I do have a tendency for over apologizing as well, which is another issue, another problem for discussion for another day. And what I do know in those situations is that I then get into this dialogue, or usually it ends up being a monologue around me and how I'm going to change and I'm going to be a better person and I apologize, and it's woe is me, 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 rather than I apologize. First of all, I absolutely hear what you're saying. What I'm hearing is, so clarifying and checking in for understanding first, and to create an environment where that person feels heard. So when we use language like, what I'm hearing is, that person connection that they make is that I am being listened to, rather than you said this and you said that, or blah, blah, blah. So the conversation would be, what I'm hearing is, and checking also for understanding, because they have may used X amount of words, and where our interpretation is completely different to what is intended. So utilizing that language to say, what I'm hearing is blah, 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 blah. So they feel heard. And when people feel heard, their guards sort of come down. They're less likely to be defensive and attacky. And checking in for understanding, when they see you making the effort to understand and check in that you've understood, again, the guard's going to come down and they're going to less likely to be defensive and attacky and once we've clarified and we've understood, acknowledge the impact, apologize, and then state the actions that you're going to take from here on in. So from here on in, I'm going to absolutely do my best to ensure that I don't bring up this topic in front of you. Would that be helpful to you? Is that Is that what you're seeking? So again, checking in for understanding. So really sticking to the situation rather than us. So it can happen in both ways, in both dynamics. We can be very defensive and very like, because we're going into a bit of a shame spiral, we're the ones that have caused the offense or said something really, really shitty. We can go into a shame spiral like, I didn't say this and I didn't do that and I didn't say this and good to that, blah, 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 rather than sticking to the situation. And it can be the opposite. If we are the persons that have caused that, we can go into, again, a shame spiral and I apologize, tears start flowing, I didn't mean that, blah, blah, blah. And we've just made it all about us. And the conversation is about us. And what we really need to do is stick to the situation. So that's strategy number one. Stick to the specifics of the situation. And if you're not sure if things are fact or not, clarify that and get the facts. The second thing is sticking to and committing to resolving the matter. So often the conversation will wear off, and that is because people's shame comes into the mix. So whether it's I've done something bad or they're accusing me of doing something bad, or that person has created that hurt and harm towards me, has offended me, and there can be a bit of a shame spiral and a shame guilt there as well. So we need to make a real commitment to sticking to and committing to resolving the situation and being very alert to when the conversation is starting to wear off. And how it generally starts to wear off is other things start to get thrown into the mix. Well, you said this the other day, and basically everyone's dirty laundry starts to get paraded around, particularly when I tend to see this behavior the most when the individual who has caused the offense starts to go into a shame spiral. They will automatically go into defense mode, which is, well, you did this and you did that and you said this and you said that, and they will bring up all your shit that apparently they've been storing for a really, really, really long time. So whenever that happens, whether we are the ones doing that or the other person is doing that, we need to stick to resolving the matter by bringing the conversation back on course. What does resolving the conversation look like to you? What does resolving the conversation? What does resolving and restoring this relationship, what does it look like to you? And what does it look like to me? I think stating that from the very beginning is really important, stating the intent of the conversation. And then whenever it starts to wear off, actually calling that out and say, we've made a commitment to resolving this conversation. This conversation is starting to it's starting to wear off. Resolving, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back on track. How does that sound? Is that okay with you? And checking in to get consent, because when there's consent, there's more buy-in. And people more likely to engage in resolving the actual matter. That said, some conversations are unresolvable. So for me, I had a difficult conversation with what can seem difficult. Didn't feel difficult, although it was difficult in the context that I really wanted to be like, so I had to really regulate my emotions and regulate what I was saying, because I actually absolutely had a commitment to resolving the matter. I wasn't sure if I had a commitment to restoring the friendship and reconciling. So the intent was to understand their perspective, understand if they were really genuinely apologize. A person that apologizes is someone that is committed to change and improving and doing better, right? If a person doesn't improve to changing and doing better, that is not an apology, whether they want to restore or reconcile the friendship or relationship or not. So, for me, that was the intent. And so absolutely, whenever the conversation veered off, really resolving and getting the information that I needed to make that decision, I had to bring it back, because what that individual ended up doing was, well, you did this and you did that. And, I brought you into my life and, invited you to hang out with my friends. And I don't know how that is, but anyway, still got a bit of resentment there around that comment, as you can tell. And, I had to keep bringing the conversation back. This is your behavior. Was that your intent? Do you recognize that that was your behavior? Because if you don't, then I can't be friends with you. So we need to really stick to resolving the conversation. And then from there, what does resolving the conversation look like? Is it about going your separate ways? So kind of closing the chapter, seeking closure to then be able to go in your separate ways? Or is it about getting the facts to then make a decision about what to do? Or is it about actually restoring and reconciling the relationship as well? So being very intentional from the very beginning is important. Communicating that intent is very important. And then sticking to that, regardless of whether you want to restore or reconcile or get the facts or information about whether you want to do that or not is irrelevant. I think sticking to resolving the conversation and closing the loop is really important, because what actually ends up happening is conversations go on loop and repeat, and don't actually get resolved. So with me, I kept bringing it back. The conversation only lasted for maybe about, I think somewhere between 5 to 15 minutes. It wasn't that long, because I immediately saw that it wasn't a genuine apology. They did not own their behavior. They did not commit to changing. This is who I am. I'm not going to change, blah, blah. It's pretty black and white statement. And the decision was made up in mind. The conversation is over. I just got up and left. Well, I said, thank you for reaching out and connecting. And I left with grace and was actually going to give that person a hug, but they actually walked off. So we need to stick to resolving the conversation and putting a loop. Resolving to me also means closing the conversation, not going on repeat and not bringing up this conversation in the future. Have the conversation once, close it, that's it. The third thing is asking that person that you are having that conversation. So basically what I said before at the beginning of point number 2, which is sticking to resolving the conversation, is we need to state our intent from the very beginning. And we also need to ask for their consent, ask for their agreement. So the intent of this conversation is for us to blah, blah, blah. How does it sound for you? Is that okay for you? Or did you have a different intent to the one that I had in mind? So stating the intent of the conversation at the beginning is really important. And we discussed under point number 2, what that looked like and how you can actually do that as well. The third thing that we really need to engage in a conversation is regulating our emotions. So often, particularly when people bring up shit from the past, when people say that we've done something, we can go into a shame spiral, or even if we're the person that have experienced that harm, there may still be a lot of emotions in our body. We might experience, for example, for me, I was re-traumatized and I was re-triggered from the connection that behavior, because that behavior was traumatizing, it was aggressive, and I felt unsafe. So because they are the 3 behaviors that exist in abuse, my abuse wound was poked and provoked, and I was re-traumatized. That said, what am I responsible for? What are they responsible in terms of I'm responsible for my own healing? And, when I've done a lot of work on myself. I get exposed to a lot of different kinds of behavior in the work that I do. And this person's behavior absolutely was threatening, aggressive, and was unsafe. So for me, that was one. There was an impact to me. So that was one set of emotions. The other set of emotions was that I was re-traumatized and I was re-triggered because their behavior was very much psychologically abusive in nature. And so for me, I had these 2 sets of emotions that were swimming, which is also why I did not reach out to the person, because I needed to ground myself first in order to have a healthy and constructive conversation. I also wanted to take the time to decide what I wanted to do with the friendship, what was in service to me, and what was going to be the highest integrity and highest level of in terms of me in my own behavior, what was going to be me standing in my highest, I don't know how to describe it, put the words around it, highest version of me, I guess. And And I also wanted to take the time to understand if having a conversation with them would be worth it in terms of would I feel worth it to me meant would I be safe? And straight away, I could see them getting defensive and that behavior was starting to come out this time because I guess because they weren't drinking as well, they were able to kind of bring their emotion down, but I could definitely see that that's where the conversation was heading. So that's another reason why I pulled back on the conversation and ended it really quickly as well. So for me, understanding people's emotions and understanding whether they're regulating it or unregulating themselves, for me, I could see that she would be aware and then she would regulate her emotions and bring it back down. But I also knew from experience coaching people, mentoring people, working with people who experienced trauma, working with myself, my own trauma, I knew that this conversation would eventually lead to that behavior because that was a dominant behavior. That was the way that she dealt with her emotions, which was to be aggressive, to behave in a way that was threatening to people. And because of these own feelings of, she was someone that, if I look at it from a psychological perspective, wasn't able to create a feelings of safety within her own self and feeling safe to feel her emotions, because what told me that was that she put her emotions in her box. When people their emotions in a box is because it's generally feelings of feeling unsafe with your emotions. I knew that this is not someone that had the skills to regulate their own emotions. This is what their behavior is. And when people drink, they show you who their true selves are. And this is their behavior, and this is who they are. This is someone that struggles to regulate their emotions. So can be very overwhelming. Sometimes it can be a little bit stressful to analyze their behavior and analyze yours as well. Taking moments of pausing, I think is really, really helpful to sit down and ground and understand, ask yourself, are they regulating their emotions right now? Am I regulating my emotions right now? Because if you both aren't regulating, that's just fucking chaos right there. And if one person is unable to regulate their emotions, then the conversation is not going to be able to resolve itself. So put closure around it. And if you're seeking reconciliation or restoration, that is not going to happen as well. So regulating your emotions and being able to gauge if that person is able to regulate their emotions as well is really, really key, because what actually ends up happening is people acting ways that are really aggressive. They attack, they're like, attack back, and they create hurt and they create more harm as well. So those are the 4 key tools that you can utilize when you're having difficult conversations, when you are in an argument or about to have an argument. There are 4 really effective tools that you can utilize. Number 1, stick to the situation, to the behaviors, actions, and decisions. Stick to the content as opposed to the actual individual. Stick to resolving the conversation. So putting a loop, putting closure on it. Have the conversation once, don't have it repeatedly because you haven't closed it. And stating your intent. What does resolving the conversation look like? And what is your intent? At the end of the conversation, what would an ideal outcome look like for you? And then ask the other person as well. And then evaluate where you are at and they are at regular checkpoints in the conversation. Are you both demonstrating that you're regulating your behaviors? Because if you are not, and regulating your emotions, people that struggle to regulate their emotions can also show you that by speaking in a way that is seemingly calm and grounded and well put together as well. They can they can struggle with regulating their emotions, even though, regulating your emotions doesn't always look like, that unregulated emotions don't always look like that. Sometimes it's also being really calm and grounded, right? That can show you that that person is actually out of touch with their emotions and out of touch with your emotions as well, putting emotions into box. So there is a bit of a fine balance there. Importantly, we want people to be able to regulate their emotions, to breathe, to be genuinely grounded. And I think the way that that happens is when you are interested in what the other person has to say rather than yourself. So those were those 4 strategies for today: sticking to the situation, sticking to resolving the conversation, stating the intent at the beginning. The intent is to resolve and if there is anything else. and regulating your emotions and checking at regular intervals as to if they are regulating their emotions. Because if they're not, end the conversation and resume at a later point. I hope that was helpful. My name is Winifred Bonnie. I am an executive coach. I do a lot of work around leadership and working in a business as a consultant and running leadership training for organizations and for teams and culture change and things like that. If that was helpful, I would love for you to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel, and make sure you get behind your Black, Indigenous, people of color creators as well, particularly in the area of self-development. We keep hearing and seeing the same old people, right? You know that. I don't have to spell it out to you. You know exactly who and what I'm talking about. We need more diversity. I put diversity in quotation marks because technically there is no diversity. There is people, human beings on this planet called Earth, and there are people that don't have a seat at the table because people keep shutting that fucking door. So help people open the door by supporting creators like myself who are sharing information also through lived experience. And the more that we support Black, Indigenous, people of color content creators as well, the likelihood of us having a seat at that table and also speaking about personal transformation, self-help, personal development, business transformation and business, starting a business and so forth, we're going to get more incredible information out there because we're speaking also from lived experience, and that we have a different view and lens on how we do personal development, how we do business transformation, or how we start a business and so forth. So give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and please share this video with at least one person that you think really needs to hear this message today. I want to tell you that I love you. I want to tell you that I believe in you. I want to tell you that I 100% support and back you to be the highest, best version of yourself today. I know that you have the absolute commitment to being that person today in order that you can better serve the world and have a better impact on the world today. Much love to you, and I will see you in the next video next week.